Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the VR drone ready to fly kit from Newbie Drone. Everything you need right inside here, no programming at $159.99. And with most kits, we're looking at budget because you're wanting to get started, on the lower end to dip your toe into FPV and see if FPV is for you. We'll go through each of the components. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions, what you get, and maybe some limitations or what you don't get with each individual component. First off, we're going to start with the goggles. It's got a neat little trick up its sleeve, which we'll get to in just a second. But this is the one piece of this kit that you can take on your journey to other quads. This is an analog setup, so if you're not familiar, in FPV we now have several different video systems and they aren't compatible between one another. Analog was where we started, it's what we still fly, but we also have DJI's video system, we also have Walksnail, Avatar's video system, and HD Zero's video system. This is analog, and so you could use these goggles with other analog quads. And inside, it's got this neat little trick. This is held on by magnets, it separates. Whoop. And inside there, we've got the quad, a charger, which charges via USB-C. We've got 4 slots. The lights go from red to green on charging, red when they're still charging, green when they're done. We've got this foam padding in here that holds our 1S batteries, and it does come with 4 1S batteries. Inside here, this removes, so then you could put this back together and you can see the screen. But what came out of here, this is essentially the drone. And it's a brush drone. Now, brush drones, we don't commonly see them a whole lot anymore. We flew these for a very long time. One of the things that is a benefit for a brush drone is with lower performance, it means it's going to be easier to control. It's also going to give you longer flight times and be very, very quiet, which might be important to you. One thing to note about the goggles is it also charges via USB-C, and it's got an SD card on here so you can record your flights. It records in kind of that older style of DVR, which is at 28, 29 frames per second. In the flight audio, or the flight footage that you'll see in this video, has flight audio. That is not part of this kit. I use a secondary camera so that you get to hear what the flights sound like, as well as it just kind of brings the flight alive a little bit. I use these goggles during all of my flights, but as you can tell, I wear glasses and I can't quite see the image clearly. So that could be a limitation if you're like me and you don't have 20/20 vision. The safest bet would be, if you don't have 20/20 vision, is to maybe detach this and mount it to a tripod or something, but it does not have a screw mount on the bottom like we see with a lot of screens that are removable. So you would have to DIY something in order to get this further away, which for me is what I needed. I can see everything, I just can't see it clearly. Before we move on, it does come with extra props, and something that I encourage you to note about your quad is to look at the props and make sure that they're pressed all the way down. In my particular case, I lost 2 props on the first flight. They must have been sitting very high up because as I was just kind of cruising around, 2 props flew right off. So check those props, make sure you push them down, set them down on a flat surface, take your thumbnail on each hand and just kind of press down firmly. You should kind of hear them snap in place. The remote also charges via USB-C. It has an LED light around here, and then it changes to a different color. Sorry, it escapes me what the color is when it's completed charging. These are our toggles to change our modes and to arm the quad. We just flip these toggles around a little bit. The remote is small, as you can tell by looking at it in my hands. I kind of like small remotes. I tend to use a small, well, my small remote costs more than this entire kit all combined, but I fly pinching style, but you could also fly this with just your thumbs. It makes a tone when we turn it on here, and it kind of tells you via that tone that it's on. It also vibrates. The goggles make the same tone as well when you turn them on and off. The precision on these, as you might expect, isn't as high grade as something that I use on a daily basis. My gimbals cost almost as much as this entire kit, let alone the radio and the gimbals cost more than this entire kit. So that's one of the things that it's a limitation, or that we're giving up on the budget side of things, is that exact precision. But I will say, for a kit at this price, I have used far worse radios or remotes at a greater price point. So still a good job, I think. On the backside, we've got a couple of areas where our fingers can sit. I think it just kind of sits in my hands. My middle fingers kind of go into this cupping area in the back. And probably the most important thing you need to learn about is to do the gyro calibration, which we'll go ahead and do that real quick. So we just slide our battery into a little slot. We plug it in. It's nearly silent on startup. You pretty much don't hear it. And then to calibrate the gyro, and the gyro is what tells it when it's flat. So you're best off calibrating this gyro on as flat a surface as possible. I'm not talking flat like a table, but I'm talking flat like to the earth. Because when you take off, you're no longer hovering above the table, you're hovering above the earth. So in order to calibrate this, we go down here, bottom left, bottom right. And you saw the red light flicker, and then it went solid. That is calibrated. So now, when you take off in any sort of stabilized mode, which it has stabilization on all three modes, as nearly as I can tell, even though the documentation indicates otherwise, if it drifts, that means your calibration wasn't flat to the earth. It was only flat to the surface. So for best results, you kind of need to get a level out and get a really flat surface in order to be able to calibrate it correctly. And calibration is something that gets malaligned as we crash and do bumps into walls, furniture, trees, what have you. So calibration is something you're going to need to do fairly often. To arm the quad, we just use this toggle right over here, and you can see the prop spin, and we're set to go. We raise this throttle, and it'll lift off. As you can tell, my calibration was not flat. It immediately started coming back. So this table is not flat to the earth. So I've got the quad set on the ground, and you can see it says level mode there. If we move this toggle on this side over here, we get horizon mode. Horizon mode still has self-stabilization, so it'll try to flatten out all the time. But it also allows you to do flips and rolls, so you can go 360 in all the directions. If you let off the stick, and I'll show you this, if you're doing a flipper roll, you don't have to nail to get the exact level. It will level for you. And then we toggle it one more time, and you see it gets air mode. Now in the documentation, as I said previously, they said that it had what essentially is acro or rate mode. For a full FPV experience, I found that air mode still had self-stabilization. To get into the OSD, we go like this, the sticks full left, and right stick full right, and hopefully you can read this. It's going to be tough to see. I would suggest for people getting started, don't mess with these things, because once you get in here and start tinkering, you could do yourself a little bit of a disservice. Like say rates, let's go into rates. And so here it shows you your angle. Hopefully you can read that. Let me adjust this box a little bit. So your angle, you can decrease that, and that will slowly take away the self-stabilization. But the rates, that is the speed at which it moves in the direction that you give it with the sticks. So you can change those rates up and down. I'd just fly it and have fun. I use these all stock, as you see in my video coming up. PIDs, I would definitely not change those, but they are available here for you to look at if you'd like to try to understand PID controllers. Flight controller, you can change the name, and that's all it's under here. In the OSD, you can change the values or their position within the OSD. This is a custom OSD chip used by Newbie Drone. VTX, this is where you can change the band and the channel, and you can also change the power, but in this particular case, power, it's 25 milliwatts only, so we're not actually going to be able to change that. And that's really the OSD, how we navigate it. Hopefully you can see the little remote down here. This remote is not a protocol that you're going to be able to use with other receivers on other drones as well. I did ask Newbie Drone that question. They said it was their own protocol. So they didn't name a protocol. I can't tell you what it is, unfortunately. Back here at this last screen, we have reset to factory defaults. So if you were to go in there and tinker with some things and you didn't like the changes that you'd made, you can reset things just to how you got them out of the box. So let's say you go into the OSD. If I can get that to come up again, come on. There we go. And you went into the VTX and you change the channel. Come on, go back up to race band. And you went into race band 8, which is my preferred channel. Oops, I misnavigated there again. And then you go back. Oh, you've lost it. They have a feature right here where you can see the hourglass. If you press and hold that, it will scan through all the bands and channels. and it'll get you back to where you belong. This isn't always foolproof. I'm talking generally speaking in FPV. So you may want to use the buttons for band and channel in order to match those settings that we set in the VTX menu. So if you get where your video isn't working for some reason, use that to get some video on there and to be able to go into the VTX menu to check what channel and band that you last set the quad to, or last one that it's on. The last thing to talk about is the micro SD card. You just use your fingernail here to get it in and out. They include a 32 gig card. It's just Newbie Drone labeled there. They do not include something to insert this into in order to get this off your computer. So you would need some sort of SD card reader. If your computer, say a laptop, doesn't have an SD card slot, it's already built into it. So that's pretty much all you don't get, is that potential adapter for SD card reader. But this can also come in quite handy if you go down in some tall grass and you can't find it. So we're going to take a look at the few flight samples. Again, yours will not have flight audio. I have edited in flight audio so that you could hear how quiet this one is in the house, as well as outside. You'll be able to hear all the summer insects and things of that nature. So again, to be ultimately clear, in all my videos, I include flight footage or flight audio that is not part of any of these quads. It's from a secondary camera, and I bring it in through video editing so that you get the feel for the quad as well as the sound. Now, again, we're flying at 25 milliwatts, which is a low power output by today's standards. In my house, I'm even flying on E1 as far as the channel. The frequency is 5705, and it's doing fine. It's not great, but it's doing fine. If your indoor structure or structures that you're flying around outside are different than mine, then your signal quality as well as your image quality might not be quite the same. Cement is one of those things that if you're in an apartment complex and you have cement walls or cinder block, our FPV signal does not penetrate those things well. So going from room to room or from floor to floor may not be possible. It's really big variable. Even if you go outside in humidity, you'll find that the signal range and quality can be different. Get behind a house, a building of any sort, a tree, all those things are going to affect analog FPV, which we have known for a very, very long time. The nice thing about analog FPV is it starts to break up to where you see that more and more of those staticky lines, and then you know I need to fly in a different direction in order to get around this object so that you can get your signal quality back. But I'm flying inside the house here in horizon mode. No, it's not a top performer, and I'm really not trying to push it. The camera is a fixed camera angle. So in order to fly faster, you'll have to actually just kind of lower or increase the your horizon for your vision in order to fly faster. But you could definitely fly faster. The nice thing about this is that it flies for a long time. And as we jump into the outdoor footage, you can see I'm flying far faster than I was inside the house. You can also see down in the lower left, this top row where it has our fly time. That fly time, I found that the quad will allow you to fly up down to like 3.2 volts on your battery, which is down in the lower right. And then it won't auto land. It just kind of slowly decreases the throttle. So if you're way up high and your battery is at 3.3, you need to get down low and get back home really, really quick. So it'll land automatically. I recommend actually landing at 3.3 volts or even 3.4 to maintain the battery health over the long term. You'll still get close to 5 minutes. I found that I got about 5 minutes and 30 seconds flying it with the default settings all the way down to 3.2 volts on the battery. But I wouldn't recommend that, especially for newer folks. 5 minutes of flying around is probably pretty intense. You can give yourself a little break and just bring it in at around 5 minutes, or when you see the voltage getting down to 3.3 volts. The battery will come back up a little bit after you land and disarm. That's why I'm saying 3.3 volts. The charger does not have storage charging capabilities, so once you go from fully charged status to 3.3 volts or 3.2 volts and maybe it bumps back up, anything below 3.8 volts, you kind of need to charge the batteries back up. And that could be a little bit of a process for you to maintain battery health. You may want to just stop flying at 3.8 volts if that's satisfactory, getting a couple of minutes of flight for you. Here we've scooted forward and we can see we're at 3.2 volts and it's coming down. And yeah, I was getting home and that's all she wrote. Disarmed, 5 minutes and 29 seconds, 3.2 volts on the battery. Again, I think landing at 5 minutes is a better idea because you'll save your battery health. Here's just a little sample of doing some flips. You see how it kind of snaps there? It's always going to be bringing you back to level in horizon mode because that's kind of the job of the quad at that point. It knows you want to be stabilized. It knows which way's up, which way's down. So when you let off the stick and you're at an angle, it's going to try to flatten you out. So it's not pretty by any stretch. It's not going to be glamorous, but it is going to give you the ability to get that stick timing down in order to do those sort of snap, flip, and roll maneuvers. Good training mechanism and doing it safely. I would suggest to anybody trying to do these things for the first time, get yourself at least 10 to 12 feet up off the ground, over grass preferably would be the best way to go about it. No flight audio in this particular sample, but I did wanted to give you a quick peek of how it looks when you're doing snap, flips, and rolls with horizon mode. The last bit that I think I've mentioned already in the video is, unlike a lot of our other quads, this quad does not have a USB port on it. So even if you wanted to program it, you can't. Well, I shouldn't say you can't. You can't in the native way that most of us veterans who've been flying FPV for a while are used to configuring our quad flight controllers through Betaflight or iNav or what have you. This doesn't have the USB port here for us. PH20, while that connector is fine, over, let's say, 100 flights, you could find that your flight time starts to come down even if you're maintaining good battery health. These are known to just break down over time. Whether it's 100 flights or 200 flights, I really can't say. We just know in this hobby that PH20, they're little tiny rolled pieces of metal in here that with all the connections and all the power moving through that connector, that over time they do break down. So that's one of the limitations or things that you don't get when you're buying a kit on the budget. Is most notably, we're mostly using BT20, or we're also using the A30 or even GNB27, which are more robust connectors that so far we really don't know if they're breaking down at all anymore, but they're much more significant as far as the connecting metal goes. So that's something else to note. Also, the brushed motors. Brush motors do wear down over time, unlike brushless motors. We're more commonly using brushless motors currently. You can replace these. I would suggest replacing them with the same motors from Newbie Drone. That way you don't have to change anything in those PIDs that I showed you in the OSD, because if you change the motor, then you're likely to need to make an adjustment of the PID, and that can get into a whole different of FPV that is a different learning process altogether. So as the motors tend to wear down, maybe you're experiencing less overall performance, but your connector's still in good shape. Maybe you bend a shaft after a really hard crash or something like that, and you've got some vibrations going on one particular motor. Get some more motors from Newbie Drone. Again, I couldn't tell you how long it will take before you'll notice anything. It's been a long time since I've flown brush quads, but they do wear down over time. There's much more to the reasons why, but for our purposes in this video, just know that they do wear down. Those two bits wear down over time, and they are going to need to be replaced, which most of our veterans can chime in and probably show us pictures of piles of brush motors that they've had over the years as well, because I think we tended to collect those like a badge of honor in FPV. So it's $159.99, which you don't get. You don't get a high performance, a 2024 brushless FPV tiny whoop. You're getting something that's more mild in the performance side. It's going to be safer and easier to control, as I mentioned. I think this one is going to be more durable for crashing purposes, because when you're getting started, you're going to crash a lot. You're going to bump into things if you're flying inside or out. I do suggest starting outside, and when you're flying outside, you'll need to pick days where the wind is really, really low. On the days that I was showing you, the wind wasn't necessarily really low, but pretty low, around 10 miles an hour. But of course, we've got houses, fences, trees that are protecting us from some of that wind. So that should give you some point of reference. Overall, for this kit and it being quiet and having a remote that, again, not as precise as the gimbals that I like to use and smooth, but they did much better than kits we've seen from other companies. Some of you might remember the Emax ready-to-fly kits This is far superior to what Emax was introducing for years on their Ready to Fly kits. So I can see where someone can actually grow and develop their skills with this remote. If you have 20/20 vision, these goggles should work fine. If you're like me and you don't wear, and you do wear glasses, you'll probably have to get this screen out away from you. There is a way that you can also mount a pair of magnifying glasses in here. That's going to be a tedious process. I don't see any screws in the shell, so you're not going to be able to split the shell. But, maybe if you find that it doesn't work very well, you can take a pair of magnifiers like this and glue it up in there to help you clear that image up a little bit. You might also be able to just buy a pair of glasses from a big box store, a $9 or $10 pair of glasses that are cheap, that you can fit right in there and maybe stick them with some hot glue or something. That may also work. I just want you to know that box goggles and those of us that wear glasses, they don't necessarily work for all of us. I'm close on this set, but I couldn't see the image perfectly clearly. So that's one of the things I have to make sure it's really clear in this particular video. As far as their fitment goes, they fit like, well, I hate to say it because if you're looking at this product, you've never probably tried one on. They tend to lean forward because all the weight's up here. You've got your screen, you've got your battery, you've got all the electronic components. This is just your plastics. So it tends to weigh forward. But the nose cutout I thought was pretty well done, at least for my nose. And I didn't find that it was resting on the bridge of my nose. That's something that can often happen. And it's got this 3 strap, so that allows it to more hang off the top of our head, which is far more comfortable than it hanging off the bridge of our nose. Again, $159.99. If you are interested, say you've got someone up the street, a nephew, a niece, somebody in your household that you want to get started in FPV and you're looking for something that's a pretty tame performer, something that they're going to be able to control, something that you can factory reset for them if they get in there and tinker a little bit. At $159, it's a pretty good quality kit. I think somebody could have a lot of potential fun with this and fly with it for quite a while before they grow into using, flying other quads. And again, this would be the only part that you would use if you were flying other quads. This is using a protocol that is unknown, and I'm told that it's Newbie drone specific. So unless we can find a receiver that's specific, and this has a bind function somewhere, not very likely. But if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.